Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid, Bok for short. So today I'm looking at the top 10 films of one of my favourite film directors, John Carpenter. So coming in at number 10, my first choice is his 1993 film In the Mouth of Madness. Now pretty much from the kind of later part of the 80s onwards, Carpenter's films take a real dip. And it was quite, it wasn't a hard choice to pick this because this is like the one that I think that stands out the most. I saw the pictures at the time. It's got a good performance by Sam Neill, Jürgen Prochnow, interesting story. I think when I saw the pictures at the time, it was kind of like a 6 out of 10. I saw it since then, and I would sort of stay on track with that. It's not a great film, but it's got enough about it to warrant its placing at number 10. I think it's better than Prince of Darkness. It makes more sense anyway. The other choice was Dark Star, which is a kind of quirky first film, but I've just never connected with it. So it's there kind of by default. I think what lets the film down is by this point, Carpenter's films, like a lot of films in the late 80s, mid 80s, onwards to early 90s, have fallen into that kind of flat aesthetic with the photography and lighting. And that's when you've got the creatures and the effect shots, it's just... it's kind of showing too much. It just needs more artistry and artistic expression in the cinematography, like his earlier films. So yeah, it's worth checking out. But other than that, his 90s films, I mean, some people like vampires, I know that. But yeah, it's he kind of like lost his way for me. Coming at number 9 is... Now, I keep doing this, I have to look at my list to remember. It could be controversial, this that I've picked this, but it's Big Trouble in Little China. Now, a lot of people have a lot of love for this film. I really enjoyed it as a kid, when I was like 15, 16, and I watched it 2 or 3 times around that time. But I hadn't seen it for about 30 years and watched it recently. And I just think I've kind of moved on, as it were. It's not kind of as up my street as it was back in the day. But what I do think, I think it looks great. It's got great set design. The photography is really cool by Dean Cundy. And the effects, although they're 80s and look like effects, they're actually cool 80s effects. It's got a funny performance by Kurt Russell. I think one of the undoings of the films, probably for audience at the times, is like Kurt Russell's kind of an idiot or kind of a dumb hero all the way through. I think you'd have a Make America Great Again cap if they made it now. But Kim Cattrall's Heart, of course, in a Holy Trilogy mannequin. Police Academy of Big Trouble in Little China. Obviously the Asian characters, the way they're depicted, and the Asian culture's like dated now. It's often the case with these films. But I think this is a little bit of an undoing for Carpenter. It's tonally, it probably didn't hit the spot with audiences, and it was an expensive film and he didn't make his money back. And I think he kind of struggled in the kind of bigger studio with the bigger budgets, like he did Memoirs of Invisible Man later on as well. But I do understand people's love for this film. I do like it. I just don't like it as much as I used to. The next film I'm going for, number 8, is the kind of same thing. Again, it's a film that has a lot of love. I did enjoy it originally when I saw it. When I watched it last time, it's kind of 80s-ness and flatness of the photography kind of didn't enjoy as much, but it's They Live. Very funny film, quite innovative in that it casts a wrestler, Roddy Piper, who gives like a fun performance, and I think Carpenter shows real skill in kind of circumnavigating his acting limitations. And obviously now The Rock, John Cena, particularly The Rock, are big stars, so he showed like a real foresight there. The subliminal advertising is really cool. Obviously, we live in the age of Facebook and targeted adverts, Twitter and so on and so forth, social media. So I think it preempts that. I love the aliens, the golf ball eyes. And again, it's got that paranoia, he's influenced by 50s Reds Under the Bed films like Invaders from Mars and so on, but he's kind of constructing it into corporate Reaganite America, the idea that there's another order behind things, I think. So again, I do like the film, just not as much as I did at the time. The next film I'm picking at number 7 is, again, it's the same thing. It's a film I like. I don't like it as much now, but it's moving, and it's got a great, the only Oscar-nominated performance directed by Carpenter, and that's Starman, starring Jeff Bridges. So this was actually his last hit film, really. I checked it was quite expensive, $21 million budget, I think, but it grossed $28 million, so it did quite well. I don't think it's got as much traction in Europe, but in America it did all right. And this was probably his biggest studio film at that point. It's a spin on E.T., an adult spin on E.T. Like I say, last time I watched it, I didn't like it as much, but it is a good film. It's a good piece of filmmaking. Jeff Bridges gives an excellent performance, and so does Karen Allen. Good supporting cast. Always had good cast, Carpenter. Always good with actors. Forget there's a musical score for this, but I think the cinematography on this film is done by Donald M. Morgan. Don't quote me on that, but he was a guy he'd used to shoot his films that when Dean Cundey didn't do them, but Morgan sort of copies the Cundey look. Okay, so those are the kind of ones filling out the top 10, really. The 6 Carpenter classics, and that's what we're going to look at now. So coming in at number 6 is Assault on Precinct 13. So this is his second feature film after Dark Star, and it's his first belter. Basically, it's a spin on Rio Bravo, the classic Howard Hawks western, where the jailhouse is under siege. Basically, Precinct 13 is being shut down. The hero cop, played by an African-American actor, Austin Coker, which is cool, ends up there with various waifs and strays, I suppose, including a criminal played by Darwin Joston. And they get under siege by a gang because there's someone in the precinct they want. Prior to this, the gang has murdered a little girl buying an ice cream. She actually see it get shot in the face. Really shocking. I wonder if Carpenter had seen Jodorowsky's El Topo, where a child gets shot in the face. But I wonder if this film went out unrated, actually, because it's got really visceral violence. It's still shocking. But it's great, really good characters. Like I said, the main 2 characters, Austin, played by Austin Stoker and Darwin Joston, he's really interesting. He's like a precursor to the Snake Plissken character, really, that Kurt Russell would play. He's the anti-hero, he's the anti-establishment figure who sees through the bullshit but has a moral code and rises to the challenge. Really good, great musical score, great editing. This is perfect low-budget B-movie filmmaking. You know, he's got a limited budget, he's got limited resources, and he extracts the maximum out of them to create a real cult classic. And it's well worth checking out. Okay, so coming at number 5 is... Again, people might have this higher. I do really like it. It's Escape from New York. So... Again, Carpenter's one of his best ever musical scores, themes. Kurt Russell, brilliant. Again, the anti-hero, Snake Plissken. This is their second film after the really good Elvis biopic TV movie they did in 1978. Really good cast. Again, Harry Dean Stanton, Borgnine, Adrian Barbeau, Lee Van Cleef, Isaac Hayes, Donald Pleasance. Always had good casts, always good actors. Really cool cinematography, and again tapping into the fear at the time. You know, there's a lot of films at that time tap into the lawlessness in New York, the Warriors, you know, all the derivatives of that. Obviously at that time in New York, Central Park, Times Square are really dangerous places, Bronx. So the idea that you would have an island, or you might turn part of Manhattan into a prison at least, is not beyond the realms of science fiction, although 1997 is a bit optimistic. I do really like this film. I've just got ones that I prefer more, but absolute classic. When I went to see John Carpenter play live with his band, this was the opening, the Escape from New York theme, main theme was what they opened with, was brilliant. Okay, coming in at number 4 is the film that kind of gets caught in the middle of 2 classics, but I love it, and it's The Fog. Really atmospheric, great photography again by Dean Cundey. Good casting, and great score. Just lean and mean, really good atmosphere of Hal Holbrook. Again, tapping into something in American culture, the idea of past crimes, that America is founded on criminality. Obviously, they steal the township, people steal the gold from the sailors, but you can see it as a metaphor for kind of taking a Native American land and so forth, I think. Really good. you know, this is the kind of film, actually, my dad likes this film, you know. It's generally chilling, and a hit for him, you know. He was on a roll with this. Really good. Coming in number 3, again, you might not be surprised that this is this high, but it's Christine. Yeah, some people might laugh that it's a demonic car, but I just love the way this film looks. I love it, you know, there's that great lens flare when it puts the lights on. It's actually, the photography on this is by Donald M. Morgan. So again, you would think it was Dean Cundy. So by this point, you know, Carpenter's got a look, and the guy gets in, you know, has to kind of ape the Cundy look, Carpenter look. Yeah, love Keith Gordon, cast really good. John Stockwell, Alexandra Paul, Robert Prosky, Harry Dean Stanton, brilliant. Some of the best lines in Carpenter films, really cool musical score. And a sad depiction of school bullying and how that can affect someone. And, you know, Christine becomes the thing that Arnie Cunningham's character kind of can take himself away from people, extract himself from his family life, from his friends, from the school dynamic, and do his thing. But obviously it corrupts him. It's the allure of the 1950s... what's the word, material consumption that the car represents corrupts him in a way, in going into a Reagan era, that money and material consumption could be corrupting. I think it sort of taps into something there. It also fits into that nostalgia thing, you know. But at that point, you did get films like The Outsiders, the Francis Ford Coppola film. So there was a teen comedy called Mischief later on, again set in the 1950s. So it's part of that cycle of films at that time. It was just a successful film, $10 million budget, $20 million gross. It's a film I've always loved, and it's always tapped, you know, struck a chord with me. Coming in number 2, well, it can be one of 2 films, can't it? I think you guessed that. I'm going to go for Halloween. All-time classic, greatest slasher film ever made. Creates an entire industry, really. One of the greatest musical scores. Brilliant. In 5/4 time, I think. If any musos there, and that's what's unsettling about it. It's our time signature, the main theme. Great casting again. Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, really good. But what's great about this film is he understands where the horror lies. It lies outside the frame. It's outside of where we can see. Michael Myers is lurking somewhere in the space beyond what we can see, and that's what's unnerving. And then there's beautiful widescreen compositions where you'll just see the knife at the corner of the frame. Yeah, Lean and Mean, one of the most profitable films ever made. And yeah, filmmakers now, films are too long, you know. People would do well to look at these Carpenter films and Don Siegel and those kind of filmmakers where, you know, you can tell a really efficient story in 100 minutes or less. Yeah, so number 1, you probably guessed it's The Thing. If you watch my horror top 10, you'll find that in there as well. Sci-fi as well, but horror principally. Great Morricone score, brilliant Cundy cinematography, brilliant casting. You know, obviously Kurt Russell we know in his all-time best Carpenter performance as MacReady. What I love about this film is the other actors, the kind of, you know, you recognise them later on. You'll go like, oh, that guy's in The Thing. You know, Donald Moffat, great in Clear and Present Danger, and so on. And the guy whose chest bursts open, he's in Pale Rider, for instance. But it's that thing where you invest in the characters because you don't know those actors as well. Amazing special effects that still hold up. Real physical effects by Rob Bottin. Again, you know, gets its business over and done with very in efficient time. And yeah, I think what's key about this film, as I think about its subtext and as, you know, as I've gone on through time, and I think particularly in today's world, I think what strikes a chord with it is obviously the real fear of the thing is the things we don't know who is the thing, you know. That's the fear that the characters have in their enclosed environment, and it's about kind of, do you really ever really know anyone? I think there's that, and particularly males keep their secrets. If you reveal too much, that can be seen as weakness or could undermine you in the male group. And I think that's the underlying subtext of this film. They're keeping their cards close to the chest. They're not really friends, particularly McCready character. You know, he didn't seem to be friendly with anyone. And it's that thing, you know, how do we really know people? What is really going on inside? What do they think? What do they feel? And so on. So, like, yeah, getting a bit out there with that, but I think that's a kind of rich undercurrent in that film. One of the great films, one of the all-time classic horror sci-fi films, whatever you want to call it, and definitely in my top 10 films of all time. So, yeah, and that ends the top 10 John Carpenter films. Remember to share and subscribe if you're interested in these little top 10s of films and so on. And yeah, hopefully see you again soon. Thanks very much.